Alrighty, I'm back. Oh, I forgot to turn the fan off. Is that why I did my makeup off camera? Maybe. Hi everyone, welcome back. Today I wanted to focus on complexion. You know, probably one of the most important steps in a makeup routine is focusing on complexion, because if you get complexion wrong, it just throws everything else off. It doesn't matter how snatched your eyes are, how nice your eyebrows are. If your complexion is not quite there, then it's a problem. So today I just kind of want to go through the basic steps of complexion, how to identify certain things within yourself if you are someone that exclusively does makeup on yourself, and how to identify them in someone else if you are, you know, working with clients, or if you just like doing makeup on other people, how to identify that, how to approach certain things. Hopefully someone will learn something from this. So I'm starting off with a completely bare face. I have prepped my skin. I just did my skincare, but I think that all of us should really become familiar with what our skin and what our face looks like with absolutely nothing on, so that we know where we want to focus our attention and things that we want to highlight and things that we might want to cover up, or I don't even want to say like hide them, because that's not necessarily true. It's highlighting your best features, really. So I have a pretty oval shaped face. You can kind of make the argument that I would have a little bit of a heart shaped face, but I don't think so. I'm looking in the viewfinder. I do have like a widow's peak. So a lot of the advice that I'm going to say is specific towards oval shaped faces. If you look, there's like, you know, everybody has different faces that you can look to for reference, and I will try to reference these different faces, but I only have my face here as an example today. And so you see that my chin kind of comes down to a point here, and then the rest is fairly round. Heart-shaped face, like typically there's like a little bit more of a cupid's bow. Like if you look at Manny MUA is a really good example of a heart-shaped face. I think also, yeah, Miranda Kerr is another really good example of a heart-shaped face. There's also round faces. So Nikki Tutorials is a really great example of someone who has a rounder face. Bailey Sarian, who I love, is a perfect example of a more square face, and so on and so forth. Looking straight on into my mirror that I have right here, I can see, and I don't want to like do anything, I just want to look straight on to begin with. I begin to identify certain things within my face that I might want to address with makeup. So I see that my cheek, especially on my left side, is more red, and I do have an acne scar, so that's fun. On the right side, I have a little bit less redness, but then going on to here, we have discoloration from old acne scars, as well as a little bit of texture. Same for my chin, where you can see a tiny bit of redness peeking through, nothing too crazy. On my nose, I have a fair amount of blackheads. And then if you look closely along in the sides, you can see that I do have also some discoloration around the nose. Now for women, especially hormonally, that's where we tend to get red. We tend to get red in our cheeks, around our nose, and around our mouth/chin area. Pretty much everybody has it to varying degrees. So you might have someone who is very lucky and has very little redness showing through, very little discoloration showing through, and then you might have other people who have a fair amount of redness. Something might go so far as like rosacea peeking through on their cheeks. So just keep that in mind. It's not you, it's just life, it's hormones, okay? So no need to feel bad about yourself. Next, we look at my eyes. You can see here that I have a fair amount of discoloration and under eye bags. It's partly genetic. My dad has really bad under eye circles as well, and then it's also partly because I suffer from pretty severe allergies, so like things like hay fever and that. Also, naturally, the skin around the eye is sort of like the skin around your lip. It's very thin, and if you kind of, I don't know if the camera's going to pick it up, but if you zoom in, yeah, you can see that I even have like veins peeking through, which is completely normal. Again, the skin around the eyes is quite delicate. That's why you want to be gentle with that area.
Gentle.
Moving on, I have natural darkness around my eye. Also on the lid, you can see a couple of veins. I have like a little bit extra darkness and discoloration on either side there. And the forehead, it's pretty normal. There's nothing too much to report on the forehead. So now that we've fully assessed the face, and if you're doing this on a client, it also helps to kind of like when you're prepping the skin with moisturizer or primer to sort of be able to feel if they have any texture. So as I said, I do have texture here along the right side where a lot of this acne scar is. I do have some blackheads there, and I have a tiny bit of texture currently on my chin. There's not too much texture on my forehead, but you have to be aware of texture because that's going to determine how product sits on top of your skin or on the skin of a client. So now let's go into addressing some of these complexion concerns. So the first thing I want to address is a little bit of the redness that comes through on my cheeks and a little bit on my chin. And I'm using the Cicapair Tiger Grass Color Correcting Treatment. I've seen people try to use this as a moisturizer, and I tried to do that as well. However, I don't like that. I find that I really like working with sheer layers, so I put a little bit of this, and I'm going to start on my cheek, just patting it in like such. So the reason why this particular product will work to help counteract the redness is because it does have a slight green tint. And you want to work in really, really thin layers. Like honestly, that is probably about as much as I'll put in. And already you can see how much brighter that is in comparison to this side. And mind you, I just put in a tiny bit. I didn't even put a tiny bit more right on the apple. A lot of people like to kind of forego this and just use a really, really heavy full coverage concealer or foundation. You can do that, but I find that will, if you do that, it kind of drags down the skin, and especially if you want a natural look, that's just kind of impossible to do, especially if anyone has any texture at all on their face, which most people do. So instead, I'm just working light layers with this skin product that also has a green tint that works as a color corrector. Now, you don't necessarily need this product. You can just use something that has a slight green tint to it. There are a bunch of color correctors all over the market right now, so you don't have to, you can probably find one. Look at that, complete night and day. It's already just so much nicer, and I just used a tiny bit, and you can just rub the rest of it into your hand. So that's step number one. So I already have a primer on. Again, depending on the texture of the skin, you could go, and depending on like what type of finish and what type of skin type the client has or you have, it will determine what type of primer you're using. I do have enlarged pores on my nose because of those blackheads, so I could use a pore filling primer, but instead I just opted for something that's oil control because that's my bigger problem, is oil control. So that's what I've gone with today. And I'm going to go ahead and get started with my foundation. I'm going to do half my face so that we can see the difference in how I layer these complexion products. So I'm going to start with a foundation that is the color of my skin. And this is, I really like to stick to medium coverage foundations. You don't have to. You can definitely go lighter. You can mix this with a moisturizer if you want. But the reason why I prefer, I'm going to do this half of my face. The reason why I prefer medium coverage foundations is because you can build them up if you want a more fuller coverage where you want it. You can also sheer it out to give a really lovely natural finish. So that's why I prefer them, because you can kind of get them to do everything versus like a really sheer foundation. You might get stuck layering it forever. That's if it even layers well at all. And then for something that's really full coverage, you might not be able to sheer it out to quite the degree that you want if someone wants a more natural finish. So that's why I like going for that medium coverage. So this one is a really light to medium buildable coverage. It builds really well. I'm not really going to spend a lot of time talking about it because it's discontinued. So now I know that pain. And the reason why I like to do foundation first instead of going in with concealer or anything else is because foundation, if you pick one that is pretty much the same color as your skin tone, which I would recommend doing, if you don't know how to do that, you can just color match along the jawline, which is what I've done, is because when you get that initial wash from the foundation is already going to even out a good amount of imperfections in the skin, a good amount of coloration, discoloration, or anything like that. And then you can really focus on areas that need anything extra, that need a little bit more coverage, that need perhaps a different type of color correcting, anything like that. All right, so just from that initial wash, you can see that already my skin tone is looking a lot more even on this side than it is on this side. That's to be expected. And I still see a little bit of discoloration. I don't know if the camera's gonna pick it up. Yeah. I can still see a little bit of the discoloration here from the acne scars. I still see a little bit of discoloration around the nose, and I obviously still have all of this discoloration around my eye. So that's what I'm going to get into next. I'm going to be using another color corrector. So again, to counteract red, you use green. This is just basic color theory. And then to counteract the dark circles underneath my eyes, I'm going to use this Becca Under Eye Brightening Corrector, which is this sort of peachy salmon color. Now you don't need to get this specific one, although this one has a really nice formula to it. And I like to take my finger, and again with sheer layers. The reason why this color works so well underneath is because if you really take a good look, you have the blueness from the veins, and then you have that red darkening, and so peach counteracts that purpley color really, really well. And then another thing that I have is, if I look down, you can see it. I have eye troughs. So that's what these lines are here. It's literally my skin dipping down and creating this texture. There's not really anything I can do about that. I can try and color correct so it doesn't show up quite as jarringly as if I were to go like this, and then you can really see it. However, like, there's nothing you can really do with makeup to change that. It would be very, very difficult, and you probably wouldn't get very far, especially because in the under eye area, you don't want to use too much product. I suppose I could technically get fillers one day if it really bothered me, but I ain't got money for fillers, okay? And it doesn't bother me that much. So, but in case like a client ever asks, like, you know, what can I do about this? You can kind of be like, I can use a really good moisturizing under eye cream, but that's about it. So I'm taking this in the inner corner where the majority of that discoloration is, and I'm just blending that out with my finger and blending it along the lower lash line, although some people would argue that you don't really need to do too much to that lower lash line because if you're wearing eyeshadow, you're going to cover it. But I like to do it anyway. And then I take a tiny bit more and I put it on the outer corner where there is also a little bit of discoloration. And then I just bounce my finger along the two, just like that. And so immediately, wow, what a difference. We can immediately see the difference, the brightness of this eye versus this one. And that's only going to get enhanced even more so with my concealer. So I'm taking my favorite concealer. Doesn't matter what it is. It can be any one that you like. And if you're using this on a client, do not use the doe foot. Automatically put it on the back of your hand, on a palette, anything. And I'm just taking that where there's still a little bit of discoloration, which is, again, right here in the inner corner and right out here. And focusing that on the other areas of my face that continue to have a little bit of discoloration. And right here. You can use a bunch of different ways to blend out this concealer. You can use your fingers, you can use the same foundation brush, you can use a sponge. What I like to do is take a fluffy blending brush. For example, this is the Pro Crease brush from Sephora. And I like to take this kind of more along the back of the brush so I can get a good light grip on it and just start buffing it out. And it creates such a seamless blend. It's so easy to do. And for areas like this where I have acne scars that are pretty dark, or if you're doing this on an active breakout, you should always bounce the brush like this. Balancing it will really keep the product where you need it to be, and then you can sort of buff out the edges, but on the spot itself, you're gonna wanna bounce. Next is the under eye area. So not everyone is gonna need a color corrector in the under eye area. Mine, as you can see, are pretty discolored. However, if you have someone who has a light amount of discoloration, usually a concealer will do the trick, especially if you kind of use one that's slightly more peachy in tone, peachy in undertone, I should say. Then it'll probably cancel it out without you even needing to get a whole other product. You can even mix a color corrector in with your concealer for that area to kind of do it at the same time that you're concealing. However, because mine are pretty dark, I like to go in with just a little bit extra help. All right, and then lastly, I like to take my sponge and just push everything into the face. I like to blend it like this so I can really get all the creases out. If there's any active breakout, I would more lightly tap my sponge, but I don't really have any at the moment, thankfully. And there you go. Look at that. This is a well-prepped complexion, and this is still relatively well prepped. I got rid of the redness. Still need to get rid of it. Now you can see the difference. Now you can see how just a few products and a little bit of time really kind of evened everything out and created the perfect canvas for your face. All right, everyone, so this is the finished look, the finished complexion. What do you think? It's really all about that base. Once you get a good base, everything else on top just works seamlessly. I have a video planned to kind of walk you through not exactly this look, but a pretty similar one. Just like a really great everyday look that's so easy to pop on, really minimal effort, not too much product either. So keep an eye out for that one. I also am using the Selena Rare Beauty blush today, and I stand by what I said. I've been using both of them a lot recently, and I stand by what I said of putting it on the back of your hand and then taking a brush and then putting it on your face. It makes it so much easier and so much more wearable. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope you learned something. I hope that, you know, you took something away. And let me know in the comments down below what you thought, what you want to see next. And yeah, I have some pretty good fall ideas, I think. So we'll see. Bye.